Hi everyone, I'm Chris Droha. This is going to be a little lesson on the moon. So the near side of the moon is the side that we see all the time. We're always looking at that side of the moon. Notice it has a lot of dark areas and light areas. This is the far side of the moon over here, and this is the area that we don't ever see. The only reason we have pictures of it are from explorations of the moon. Let's start with the moon's surface a little bit. There are three main areas I want to discuss. These dark areas here are called the Maria. Mare is a singular and it meant sea in Latin. So from Earth, a long time ago, they used to think that those were water or big seas on the moon. They actually cover 31% of the side of the moon that we see, but only 2% of the far side. There is no water there, but that was formed from when craters or when comets and meteors collided with the moon, and then the magma came up and turned into pools here and then cooled. So there are smaller regions, and they give them names based on water, lake, marsh, bay, but in Latin. The highlands are these lighter areas. A lot of times there are these regions that are around the Maria. They There's some impact basins or on the edges of craters and things like that. So there aren't any big mountainous regions. There wasn't tectonic activity like there was on Earth, but there is some that was formed by craters and whatnot. So speaking of craters, here's a picture of a crater. This is actually the Daedalus, which is 93 kilometers in diameter, and is a potential site for a radio telescope in the future. These are formed when asteroids or comets hit the lunar surface. There are actually 500,000 craters with diameters more than 1 kilometer. So 1 kilometer is a little more than half a mile, and there's that many craters. And in fact, you could actually, if they count craters, you can actually determine some relative age of certain areas of the lunar surface. The largest crater is on the South Pole. It is 2,240 kilometers in diameter and 13 kilometers deep, which is huge. The way they name these, they name the larger craters after famous scientists, artists, things like that, and smaller craters are just common first names of people. So let's talk about the moon, how it's made up. This green area is the mantle. We have a solid inner core, a fluid outer core, partially melted. There are actually very few heavy elements on the moon. Most of them are lighter elements. The core itself is iron, but most of the iron is down towards the center, and that's all because of density. If you remember that the more dense something is, it sinks, and lighter things float up. So the iron is the heavier stuff, and so it's down towards the center. The mantle and the crust are primarily basaltic, which is on the igneous side of things as far as rocks go. The atmosphere is almost non-existent. There's almost no atmosphere whatsoever. There's a little bit of sodium and potassium from sputtering. Sputtering is when things hit the surface and those gases can come off. There's a little bit from solar winds, radioactive decay, but almost no atmosphere whatsoever. The fact that it has no atmosphere has a huge effect on the temperature. So there's huge variations in temperature inside of a crater that's not getting any sunlight. It can go down to 35 degrees Kelvin or negative 238 degrees Celsius. And in the sun, because ultraviolet rays and things are not being filtered out, you can get temperatures up to 123 degrees Celsius. A couple of explorations on the moon. Ancient people observed the moon, obviously looked at it as the largest celestial body for us, and Galileo was able to then observe it using his telescope. It is actually the only celestial body that a human being has both orbited and landed on. I have a list of a few of the things. The first people making it to the moon and sending things to the moon was the Soviet Union in the late 1950s, and those all the way they landed, were the first country to land, but then the United States, Apollo 11 in 1969 was the first um, person to actually step on the moon at that point. We did end most of our missions after the mid 1970s. It was seen as not important anymore, but there are that is ramping back up. There's actually plans by Russia is working to have a permanent colony on the moon by 2030, while we, the U.S. and NASA, things are working more towards looking at Mars. Okay, thank you. We'll see you one more video about the formation of the moon next.